spicy. Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?
We'll say this. Gardner Minshew is the best backup in the NFL.
I love Gardner. Welcome to 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football. I am your host, Brian McFadden. It is Thursday, September 29th, 2022. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. If you're a podcast listener, if you've never actually watched live, you should give it a try, or at least watch the recorded videos. Go over to our YouTube channel. Just look for 30 Minutes of Football. Go ahead, subscribe, say hi. We'd love hearing from you. Very special episode tonight. As you know, we're leading right into Thursday Night Football. I've got Ray Cotto from All-22. All-22, we're going to hear all about it if you guys have never heard of it. It is the next generation of fantasy football, so you're going to hear about it here first. Ray, how you doing, man? Glad to have you on the show.
Awesome, Brian. Great to be here. Yeah, very excited. Another week of Thursday Night Football. Some people don't like Thursday Night Football. They kind of complain about it, but it's football on.
They should not be watching this show or listening to this podcast. If you don't, I would literally take football 7 days a week if it did not end in divorce for me. But anyway, excited to have you on. Met you and the other All-22 guys at the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio. Right away, loved what you guys are doing. We're going to dive into that, but how we do it on this show, we go right into it. We're going to keep to the 30-minute format. Before we get started, Anthony, don't start that timer yet. We are also broadcasting on the Pro Football Demon. He's normally here. I know you guys are interested in how he's doing. He's in the Orlando, kind of in between Orlando and Tampa area. He is okay. I've been talking to him. He does not have power, which is why he's not on the show, but he is okay. Little bit of house damage, little bit of leakage, but otherwise fine. He will not be on the tomorrow Game Picks show either, but we're hoping to have him back and at full strength next week. He wanted me to tell all of his listeners and watchers hi, so shout out from the Pro Football Demon. He's good. All right, Ray, you ready to get this party started?
Can't wait. Let's do it.
30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football starts now. Guys, so what we've done the past couple weeks is I was telling Ray this, and Pro Football Demon and I kind of adjusted to this. This was supposed to be just like a news roundup of the week, and then it just turned into start sit fantasy questions. So we've changed the title. Now I've got questions. If you guys don't have questions, I've got ways to fill this 30 minutes. But that being said, that's what this time is for. If you have any type of fantasy-related trade questions, buy-sell questions, all-22 questions, we've got the right guy on here to answer those. But until we start seeing those come in, I want to hear about all-22 first, Ray. Why don't you tell everyone who's listening and watching what all-22 is and kind of how you guys came to the idea?
Yeah, sure. So All-22 is the first and only fantasy football platform that incorporates all players on the field, all 22 players on the field. And so we do that because we are the first and only fantasy football platform to incorporate PFF grades into our scoring. So with that, we, again, account for all players on the field and also assign position weights for each position because, the PFF grade for your quarterback is much more valuable than that of your center. So between the grade and the weight, that's how your players are scored. And so really think of All-22 as Madden franchise mode meets fantasy football. You draft a full roster of 53 players, and the positions that are most important on the football field based on that position weight are the most important positions in All-22. So if you have the first overall pick, you're not going to take Jonathan Taylor at the 101. You're going to take maybe Pat Mahomes, maybe Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, perhaps, guys like that. It's also a dynasty format. So you are legitimately building a franchise. You are essentially an NFL GM. So again, think of it as Madden franchise meets fantasy football. This is our first public year of operations, and we've been overwhelmed by the feedback and are super excited to be here.
How long, because I know the answer to this, but how long have you guys been building this thing?
Yeah, so over 7 years now. And
7 years, and it's just now public. That's dedication right there.
Yeah, that it is. Definitely took a long road to get here. And it all started because I was the only player on the planet, I am pretty sure, that had Blake Bortles and Allen Robinson on their fantasy team in 2015. And not only didn't win their league, but didn't even make the playoffs. So we took a look at that and we're like, hey, this isn't quite right. Blake Bortles should not be like a team MVP, right? In fantasy football, he's not in real football, so why in fantasy? And that's how we kind of started. That was the nucleus of all 22 and how 7 years later it came to be.
So if you're an NFL junkie like me, and everybody, if you're watching this show, you know how obsessed I am with the NFL. I have a daily NFL newsletter and a daily live NFL podcast. I'd say I like football a little bit. When I found out that these guys were doing fantasy football, where I could feel more like an actual NFL general manager, where it's a dynasty, so all the guys I'm drafting, I'm keeping. I'm getting rookies and hoping they develop. I have depth charts where if somebody gets injured, it automatically subs the next guy in, because if a guy gets injured in the real game, you don't just not plug in a replacement wide receiver, offensive line. I love that. I love the idea behind it. Offensive lineman, defensive lineman. IDP is like nothing compared. This is the next evolution. So I'm so excited to play in. We do have our own legit football all-22 league. Finally got my first win, Tony Pollard. Here I am like begging for a 67 PFF grade or better, knowing that would get me the calculation to get my first victory, but I'm absolutely loving it. We did have one question come in, so let's go ahead and put that up. David Morazzo, Devin Singletary or Terry McLaurin as my flex. And shout out, says he hopes the Demon is all right. So I know Rich will probably listen to this back. You got some love out there, Pro Football Demon. But I'll let you take this one first, Ray. If you starting Devin Singletary or Terry McLaurin in the flex this week?
Yeah, I know everyone's excited. Big game from Singletary, just this past week. But the better talent is still Terry McLaurin. I know that Commanders offense is just a wreck. It's a mess. But still go with the talent things. Remember, it's still early in the NFL season. So, teams still have to find their footing and things like that. Eventually, the talent rises to the top. So I'm still going Terry McLaurin. And it's not as if, that opposing defense there in Dallas is the most shut down secondary, right? They make right. Some plays, and that defense as a whole is tough. But yards are there to be had. So I would definitely go McLaurin there. I'm not buying in 100% on Singletary just yet.
Yeah, the Bills are actually last in the NFL in rush attempts, and that includes Josh Allen. They're not even really doing design runs with him to the degree that they have in the past. Terry McLaurin, much higher floor and higher ceiling. Washington is going to be playing from behind because I think they're going to be playing from behind for much of the year, whereas the Bills are playing the Ravens. They're going to be in a little bit of a shootout. Last week, the way the Dolphins defense played, they forced Josh Allen to do a lot of checkdowns. That's not typically the Bills' style. I think that's why Singletary had such a good week. He kind of took advantage of those little dump-off passes. I don't see that happening. Go for Diggs, go for Gabe Davis. Devin Singletary, not going to be used enough to be fantasy relevant. Terry McLaurin, I am in agreement. Another question came in from Tyler Wayner. Banged up Justin Herbert against a Texan defense or a healthy Ryan Tannehill against powerhouse Indy defense? Not sure they've been powerhouse so far, but Ray, your thoughts here.
I still got to go Herbert. I've seen too many injured quarterbacks still put up big games, and it's still, I'm just going with the talent here. I know they're banged up, and it's not just Herbert that's banged up. It's pretty much everybody in LA
poor
now.
Chargers. It just seems like there's the San Francisco 49ers and the LA Chargers, for whatever reason, are constantly bit by the injury bug to where it can't be coincidence anymore, right?
Yep.
Is it a curse?
Exactly.
It's strange. These are the questions we have to ask, but yes, continue.
And Herbert survived his first. I'm assuming he survived his first, painkiller injection or whatever it is that
he didn't get Tyrod tailored, which is an unfortunate verb now.
Exactly. Good sign there.
Yeah, I'm aligned with you here. Herbert actually was considered a full participant for the first time since his injury. Last week, he practiced and he played, but he was considered limited. Today, he actually got in a full session. That bodes well. This Texans defense can't really stop anybody. They've got issues on both sides of the ball. Go with the talent. I don't think this is any type of consideration. Don't get cute. Healthy Ryan Tannehill. Indy is not a powerhouse defense by any means. They might be getting Shaq Leonard back, Darius Leonard back this week. That'll help some. But they have not really been able to stop anyone. Even last week, Kansas City was able to move the ball. There were a few mistakes that went against KC, so definitely go Justin Herbert here. XR asks, Mike Evans or Deontay Johnson? And once again, hope my dad is okay. Dad refers to Pro Football Demon. XR, for some reason, has that kind of relationship. But yes, shout out, he is okay. I have been in constant contact with him. He made sure that I was going to give a shout out and say hi to him, to all of you guys from him. He is good. But Ray, Mike Evans or Deontay Johnson this week?
I like them both, but if I had to pick one, I'm going Deontay Johnson against the Jets. I just, that's a secondary that you can get yards, touchdowns, catches. I mean, you can get whatever you want against those guys, really. And I'm a big Deontay Johnson fan, not really a fan of anything else in Pittsburgh in that situation and all that. We could talk for hours about that, but I'm a big Deontay Johnson fan, and it's a good matchup. So I would take Deontay Johnson here.
This is going to be the first time I disagree with you, and it's not because I don't like Deontay Johnson, because I very much do. But you mentioned the other issues in Pittsburgh, because I do not believe in Mitch Trubisky at all. He does heavily target Johnson as compared to the other Steelers pass catchers. I agree with you there. But Mike Evans, Tom Brady is coming off throwing to Cole Beasley, who was on the team for 2 days, Brashad Perryman, a banged-up Russell Gage. Now he gets Mike Evans back, who was out because of suspension, not injury, so he should be fully healthy. Still TBD whether Godwin or Jones, who started to practice, but then Godwin sat again today. Mike Evans could be just force-fed by Brady out of frustration against the Chiefs in a game that they're going to need to score a lot of points in. So I just think this particular matchup, yes, I'm not crazy about the Jets, but hey, Sauce Gardner has been one of the bright spots on the Jets secondary, and if he's able to at least slow down Deontay Johnson, an already really bad Steelers offense, I don't like the opportunity there at all. I'm actually going Mike Evans. But Deontay Johnson in a PPR league is going to get opportunities. So it's not night and day. It's just a difference of opinion there.
I kind of want to know who else this guy has as a receiver flex option, because these are two guys I want to put in my lineup.
Yes,
so
that is a very good point. Is this like a six team league? Yeah, let us know your roster, XR. Give us an idea of why you have this wonderful decision to choose from. Let's talk a little bit more about All-22. Tell me a little bit about draft strategies. I've been in one All-22 draft. You've probably been in, 43 or so at this point. Probably more than that as you were testing it out. How does draft strategies differ than a standard dynasty draft? Obviously, we can't compare it to redraft, but just standard dynasty draft, what are the differences you're seeing?
Yeah, 43 is definitely on the low end. I would say there's so much that goes into it, right? Because again, now you're looking at every position, and for the first time ever, you can get sniped for a guard and get upset about it, right? So that's never happened before. So sometimes you get a little paralysis by analysis. So it sounds so cliche to just go back to those sort of cliches, but it's like, hey, if you're stuck, just go with the best player available that you would want your favorite team to do in this situation, right? So again, because of position weights, it's different from traditional fantasy. You're starting with with a quarterback, and then followed by, your premier edge rushers or offensive tackles or corners or receivers. Those premier positions that get paid the most are weighed the most in our game. So you definitely want to get cornerstones for your team at those positions. And then thereafter, it's really just seeing if you can find some sort of like little arbitrage opportunities, right? Because if you look around the league, there's not a lot of good centers. And when you think about, when you say not a lot of good centers, there's really like 3 or 4. So if you can get one of those top flight guys like Creed Humphrey or Frank Ragnow, and maybe you draft them a couple rounds earlier than others might have anticipated, when you go into the game week against your opponents, and you have, even though it's lower weighted, but you have, an extra half point just from your center than your opponent. Most games are decided by about 3 points.
So close. I've seen that already. Yeah.
Because it's on a scale of 100. So that matters. If you could find those arbitrage opportunities there, go for it. And then from there, it's just, again, looking at the macro, balancing talent and age, because it is a dynasty format. So you're not just, you may just go all in on older guys like, Tom Brady and Hayward from the Steelers, just a bunch of old guys who might still grade well for another year or two and then fall off. That is a strategy, but since it is a dynasty format and it's not a dynasty format where you're just looking at quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends, and running backs, you don't want to go old everywhere, right? You definitely have to take age into account and upside. But yeah, try to find those arbitrage opportunities at some of those lower weighted positions like center or guard or linebacker, where there's also like maybe 4 good ones in the NFL. So try to get those guys.
I've been very happy with Matt Milano. He is my one player who's been grading in the 90s, has definitely helped me stay competitive. I started, and I've only done this once, and I'm glad I got to do this with you on today, but I was trying to do a segment on our Tuesday fantasy show, All-22 Non-Skill Player of the Week. The way the last 2 episodes have turned out, where our 30-minute timer's up, we got to stop. So I thought I'd move it to today. I picked a All-22 Non-Skill Player of the Week wanted to bring it up with you, and I picked Bengals edge Trey Hendrickson. It's kind of an obvious one this week. I had the first week, I think I had Connor Williams moving to center for the Dolphins. It was a little bit of a homer pick maybe, but I just like the idea of having a fantasy player that is not a wide receiver or a quarterback and just spotlighting him. Do you have a guy who kind of stood out to you this week that's not your typical running back, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback for all 22?
Well, you said those two magic words, Trey Hendrickson. My guy Bobby's going nuts. That's his guy.
That's his dude.
FAU there. So, yeah, Hendrickson. That's a great one. I'm looking at. It's funny because you don't think about it, but Zion Johnson's actually a battle of like the 2 first-round rookie guards, right? But over in LA, everyone else is just banged up and whatever else, right? But you have Kenyon Green and Zion Johnson over there as those two head up against each other. Obviously not at the same time on the field, but you kind of get a glimpse of the future of the guard position there. And, I'm interested in that because I was a big fan, more so of Kenyon Green, heading into the draft this past season. I thought the Texans made a great pick there. Some people thought they reached. They absolutely did not. Trust me on that. Let them develop. So I guess I'm going to cheat and just say, just tune into the Chargers Texans and watch the guards.
Yeah, that's right. We're watching for the guard play. That is the world we live in, and I could not be happier. Let's turn it around a little bit. Let's ask just like a general fantasy question for the last minute until halftime. What is your outlook on the Broncos' skill players in fantasy? The question being Nathaniel Hackett, Russ Wilson, that Broncos offense has heavily underwhelmed. Everybody thought, oh, you plug Russ in there and you've got Cortland Sutton, you've got Jerry Jeudy, Albert O. They're just going to have monster fantasy seasons. That hasn't happened. Even Javonte Williams has kind of disappointed a little bit. What's your outlook for the rest of the season on the Broncos skill players?
Yeah, it's very disjointed and it's hard to watch. And I almost can't believe it's going to keep up this way for the next 14 weeks or so. It has to get better.
Yeah.
I'm not hitting the panic button yet, but I've opened the little glass cover over the big red button that says panic, and I got
your
my
hand is
finger on
hovering.
it.
Your hand is hovering right there.
And by halftime of this week's game, I may just go ahead and just pound my fist on it. So heading into the year, I was still very big on Jerry Jeudy. Sutton, yeah, fine. Not greater than consensus. I wasn't high or low on him, just kind of, where he's usually been priced at is usually where I had him. Javonte, I think we all expected to have a much bigger year impact, and they're randomly giving the ball to Mike Boone. So it's weird, but I'm not hitting the panic button yet, but I may in another 4 days or so. So that's one to watch.
So I didn't hear a chime. No, Anthony missed on the halftime chime, but it is halftime. Quickly, as always, because I want to hear more about where the future of All-22. But guys, if you're not already, legitfootball.com, sign up for free, daily NFL briefing. It's just 5 minutes. Just find out what's going on in the NFL. We're going to bring the news to you. You don't have to go searching on Twitter or any of those, old school media sites. Legitfootball.com every single morning, 5 days a week, all year round. If you are an All-22 player, we're giving you injuries for offensive linemen, linebackers. We cover the entire NFL. We're not just fantasy specific. So one of the reasons why having a partnership with All-22 makes a lot of sense. But Ray, obviously this season is closed. You can't just start an All-22. But so tell us a little bit more about what you guys are planning going into next season. When should people start paying attention now if they didn't get in on the action? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So we're a fantasy platform, right? And obviously the season started, so you can't go ahead and start a league now or anything. But we are a fantasy platform that encompasses every position on the field. So we are still putting out some content on our socials as it relates to, all position players, right? And their impact on the actual game. Our game does mirror what's going on Sundays and Mondays and later on here on Thursday. So you can still follow along and follow us on our social media pages at all22_PFF. That's going to be on Instagram, Twitter, and even TikTok. You usually hear this voice on TikTok. So yeah, sorry about that. But you can follow along there. And, we have, like I said, it's our first year of operations. We have a ton of new features that are planned for this upcoming year and even later on into this current season. But yeah, you could follow along now so you can get familiar with the concept and everything that All-22 is all about. And then, come the off season, you can jump right in head first and go ahead and start a league, start a team, invite your friends and just get going. Like I said, it's back when Madden franchise was good, back in the day, like 15, 20 years ago. That's what it is in a fantasy football format. So if you loved Madden and loved franchise mode, you're going to love all 22.
That's actually probably the best way to describe it, to just as simple as possible, is it's Madden franchise mode in fantasy football. That's it. Who wouldn't love that? Guys, make sure to check it out. Make sure to follow All-22, so then when the time rolls around that you can start having drafts again. Is it like March time? Is that kind of when you guys start having startup drafts?
You could probably sign up in March, and likely, so what we did this past season is we opened it up for drafts following the NFL draft, right? So end of April, like early May-ish is when we then were able to have the startup drafts and rookie drafts for this coming season. So yeah, you kind of have like your sign up period leading up to the draft. And then, I mean, there's sign up period the entire off season, but you can go ahead and actually start drafting likely, shortly after the draft.
And I'll be bringing those All-22 non-skill players of the week here on 30 Minutes of Football. So we'll kind of keep that top of mind. All right. We have been given our halftime speeches. We are hydrated. We are ready for the second half. Ray, you ready to keep going?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So keep with the regular fantasy questions. How about Romeo Dobbs? He's our picture here above the timer. Romeo Dobbs or George Pickens going forward? Pickens, obviously, they both got a lot of hype. Pickens I think got a little bit more hype, but we've seen Dobbs produce more. Which one of those two do you like for the rest of the season?
Oh, rest of the season. You know what? I have to go with, if we're going season, I'm going to go with Dobbs.
Hold on. Sorry. So Pro Football Demon said his power is back. And look at that. He's in the chat. Sorry, had to shout that out. What's up, Pro Football Demon? Hang out in the chat. Daddy is back, XR. I'm sure you're happy. Okay, continue, Ray. Let's hear about Romeo Dobbs. Sorry about that.
That's great to see. Yeah, I have to go Dobbs if we're talking rest of the season. Better situation. I think, Rodgers doesn't normally trust like rookies, right? I think Dobbs is the exception there. The situation is unstable over there in Pittsburgh. And I think Pickens as a whole, even regardless, is still pretty up and down. So I would go Dobbs there. Yeah,
I'm in complete agreement for partially the reason I mentioned earlier, but while I wasn't picking Deontay Johnson over Mike Evans because Mitchell Trubisky, hey, if Kenny Pickett's in there, he showed a connection with George Pickens in the offseason, maybe. But Dobbs is already leading the Packers in targets and catches and receiving yards, even ahead of Lazard. Lazard did miss one game. He went 8 for 8 targets to catches. Rodgers had nice things to say about him. That's always important. We have to take that into consideration. So clearly he's starting to trust this rookie. He's looking for kind of that next Devontae Adams, and I do think Dobbs is set up to be that. I picked him in both my regular Dynasty leagues. Super high on Dobbs. Did not get him in All-22. Disappointed there. But yes, love that. So let's see. Zach Wilson, does he give the Jets an actual bump? And this is a great question. Pro Football Demon is a Jets fan, so hope you're still there, Rich. We're going to ask a Jets question for you. Does he give an actual bump to this offense?
Not this week. Not this week.
How about for the season? Forget this week, just the season in general. Because Flacco, he had the game against the Browns, but then everybody quickly realized, okay, he's still Joe Flacco. So there's a little bit of buzz around. Oh, Zach Wilson's coming back. Garrett Wilson's been playing well. Breece Hall is finally starting to show up. This offense is ready to go. And I'm like, whoa, this is still Zach Wilson. He didn't play that well last year, so I wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah, that's exactly it. He didn't play well last year. He still looked shaky before even having the knee injury in the preseason there. So I always liked Zach Wilson's upside. I did think he would take some time. So I think best case scenario, and honestly, I'd put it 50-50 to be totally honest at this point, where the second half of the year, you'll start to see those strides being made to where he's not seeing ghosts and making these boneheaded plays that at this point or coming up here pretty soon will have to be behind him for his career. So he's got the weapons now. I know they lost Becton on the line there. And so the line itself is still a little shaky, but he's got much more weapons than he did last year. The situation is improving. It's time to see him also improve with it, step up and be better here moving forward. So I'm totally 50-50 on it. I could see it going either way and not be surprised, but I am hopeful because I did like him coming out of the draft, and it'll be good to see some buzz for the Jets for the first time in a while.
I think it'll be a slight bump only because Flacco will excel when he has protection. And as you mentioned, they've had multiple problems and losses along that offensive line. They brought on Dwayne Brown to replace Becton, and then he got injured. So Flacco's been running for his life, and it has not been fun to see. At least Zach Wilson adds a level of mobility where he can roll out, make plays with his legs, make plays off platform. It may not be a huge bump, but I'll give a little nudge. Pro Football Demon says he needs that Tua level decision making. Are we there? Are we comparing decision making from Tua? I'll take it. I'll take it. For those that are not watching, I am sporting my Dolphins shirt in preparation for tonight. The last 5 minutes or so, we will preview Thursday Night Football. All right, so are the Jags for real? Are the Jacksonville Jaguars for real? I don't know if you follow Football Outsiders DVOA. They're number 2 overall in DVOA now. It's only 3 weeks. Granted, they did lose to the Commanders in week 1, but they have looked completely different. Trevor Lawrence is looking more like the prospect we thought he would, and the defense has looked really strong. Are they gonna come back to earth against the Eagles this week, or are the Jacksonville Jaguars on their way to a playoff berth?
Trevor's for real. The Jaguars, depends on your definition of for real, are, in my opinion, a year away. Okay. So I think they come back down to earth.
Let's reframe the question slightly. In a wide open AFC South, is there a realistic chance of them winning that division and therefore making the playoffs?
Oh man, I can't go there yet. It's
okay,
and maybe it's because I'm wired like some of those, like FPI and those like power ranking type metrics. You see them more so in college where they're weighted from the previous year and what, the additions from the offseason, everything like that, where it takes about the middle of the season for me to go, okay, yeah, no, it's legit. And I forget about everything else leading up to this. So I will say no if the threshold is playoffs, but the threshold for excitement, if you're a Jacksonville fan, I'm totally on board with saying, yeah, Trevor's for real. He's legit. Get excited about that. People ragged on you for the draft pick and taking Walker first overall or whatever, but that looks pretty good, right?
He's been good. Yeah.
Looks like a rookie at points, but he looks good. So you hit that. I still can't get on board with what they did in the offseason as far as the money they paid for players like Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram and all that. But in any event,
but Kirk is showing up. You got to admit, whether they overpaid for him or not, he has produced through the first 3 weeks. He has worked like a number 1 receiver. Whether that can hold up, we'll see. But so far, it's kind of been worth it.
That's what's going to go back down to earth. Is that type of stuff.
Right.
But threshold for excitement, yes. If playoffs is a threshold, not yet. Maybe next year. But I would love to see them and wouldn't be surprised they put up a good fight against Philly. I think Philly has been playing a like a Big 12 schedule to start this year and actually to end last year too before they even made the playoffs. So we'll see about that. But I would like to see them give them a tough game at the very least, and that would be a very good sign for Jacksonville.
That would be. This is a huge test this week. Pro Football Demon says, big thanks to Ray for All-22. Ray, Pro Football Demon is in our legit football All-22 league. He says it's a football lover's dream. And he threw in there, he'd be 3-0 this week, if not for a 1/10 of a point. That's the beautiful thing. So many of these games are decided by 1 point, 2 points, half a point. It makes the whole thing even more competitive and exciting. Back onto the All-22, you rely on PFF grading. There's pros and cons to that. I'm a big fan of PFF. It's one of the reasons I really resonated with what you guys are doing. A lot of people maybe like the eye test, folks out there in the media, not so much. There are some discrepancies. So I have Aiden Hutchinson. Very happy to draft him early in a dynasty format. The game he had 3 sacks, he had like a 62 PFF rating. I was expecting like something at least in the 80s, and you don't know until the next day. We have to wait for those scores. So your thoughts on that when a player who, at least if it's an IDP, he's having a monster game with 3 sacks, comes in with not a horrible rating, but just kind of very bland. What's your thoughts when it comes to that kind of grading?
Yeah, so that's probably the most common point of feedback people have with PFF as a whole, and even early on in our game, right, during the 7 years leading up to this, right, it's like, hey, what, like I saw this guy whip Mitchell Schwartz for a sack on primetime television and get a bunch of pressures, and then his grade's not that great, right? But I think Theo Ash actually on Twitter and maybe some other platforms had a really good breakdown of, in particular, Aiden Hutchinson's game and how a lot of that production was based on just offensive line errors, right? Whether it was untouched or someone else actually occupying two of the linemen in a stunt and then having him run free. So things like that where, yeah, you still have to make the play, right? And yeah, you got the motor to get there, but it's not as if you had a quick win on the rush over the edge, beat him to the outside, to his outside shoulder, and then just got the quarterback before a play could ever, get off. So that what we found is whenever examples like that have been brought up, you can go back to the specific examples and see exactly why it's not a 90 grade just because you saw the sack take place, which is the end result of the play, which is what
Right.
is, stored in your brain thereafter. So obviously you can't do that for every single person that gets a sack and then or 2 sacks and you look and it's like, why is he only 70? So, but by and large, when you do sort of look back and see the actual details and intricacies of the play, every single time, even when I've disagreed with them or I've had my own questions and be like, what is this? You kind of sit back and go, oh, okay, yeah, that's it. And it doesn't make sense. There's a reason all 32 NFL teams use PFF for their grades and their data. And it's not because they, try to be clickbaity and be contrarian, because if they were, docking players who had big games just for the sake of engagement or something, right, that wouldn't be the case. So, it's a common point of feedback, but if you do have the chance to sit down or even see some of the breakdowns elsewhere, even outside of PFF for some of these things, it does come together and the light kind of goes on and goes, okay, yeah, makes sense. That's fair.
Yeah, it's like a quarterback throwing 3 touchdowns, and all those touchdowns were like shovel passes where the guy, like the Laviska Shenault, like Baker Mayfield gets credit for a touchdown, but all he did was throw it like 8 yards down the field, and Laviska took it the rest of the 62 or whatever. So yeah, it's looking at the entire packages. They grade every single play. It's a composite, a positive or a negative for each of those plays, and then there's a composite at the end. I agree with that. I just wanted to kind of get your take and put it on the podcast. Let's go back to, we talked about the Jags and a huge matchup they have with Philadelphia this weekend. We have our power ranking show on Wednesday. I do a draft style with Jimmy Ray from the NFL Stats Twitter account, and we ended up with the Eagles as our number 1 team in the power rankings. Now, you're a Cowboys fan. Who is your number 1 if you're doing a power rankings right now?
Well, the Bills got really banged up, but I think it's got to be the Bills. I think the Eagles are just inflated by their schedule. They've definitely made great improvements to their roster, but it's got to be the Bills. Even the pieces that heading into the year, I didn't think were that solidified or that great, right? I wasn't high on Rousseau and that pass rush, not necessarily the front, but the pass rush as a whole. And they've, I know they just lost, but they've, performed very well. I think when they're healthy and really, hitting their stride over the long term, the Bills are the number 1 team in the league here. I still have to see Philadelphia play a team with a pulse and, provide a complete game before totally buying in, because last time we saw them against a good team that is able to take away what you do well, they were just smacked around for 3 hours by the Bucs. And it wasn't fun to watch.
Pathetic. That was a pathetic playoff game. Yeah.
So I wouldn't put them number 1. They've definitely improved greatly. They're definitely a playoff caliber team, but I got to go with Buffalo.
So when we do our power rankings, naturally there's a ton of opinions. And last week it was the Giants. They were undefeated, and we still had them at like 22nd or something. They lost. I predicted the Cowboys would win. The life returns to normal. But this week it was the Bills. The fact that we put the Bills at 3. And that comes down to kind of methodology. Whereas I still think the Bills are the best team in the NFL. They are still my Super Bowl favorite by far. But I can't, on a week-to-week basis, power rankings, the way I see it, is a snapshot in time at that moment, and I can't put them in front of a team that just beat them in the Dolphins, and I don't think the Dolphins have looked as good as the Eagles. Is your methodology just different? Do you think, like, if you're doing a power rankings, you're like, no, the Bills are the best team in the NFL, I'm going to put them at number 1?
Yeah, I think it's that. Like I said, I'm kind of programmed like that, like the FPI, like the preseason, like the metrics-based sort of algorithm there. And as we get further away from week 1, that sort of baseline starts to diminish, and then the results of what's taken place thus far comes into effect. So, yeah, 3 games in, not really changing it. Even if, I put them number 1, so I would have Buffalo over the Dolphins, even though they beat them, but I wouldn't sit there and argue with someone who said, well, because of that, I have to put Miami ahead of Buffalo because of the results. I get it. Can't argue with it. Just sort of different ways of attacking it and skinning the cat. So, and
neither one is wrong. It's all about methodology. It's very subjective. Just throwing that out there to all the Twitter haters. It's not an exact science.
Oh, I can explain away any take I make that turns out to be wrong. I can explain it away.
Oh, same. Of what it is. I answer every single reply on Twitter. I'm like, well, blah, blah, blah. And Jimmy at NFL Stats doesn't answer any of them. I answer all of them. All right, we got a minute and a half left. We do have a football game to talk about. Cincinnati Bengals 1-2 coming off their first victory against the hapless New York Jets. The Dolphins, we were just discussing, one of only 2 undefeated teams beating the powerhouse Bills in like a sweltering heat in Miami. I want to get your take first. Bengals are actually favored by 3.5, which is interesting considering the records. It is in Cincinnati. They're wearing the all-white uniforms. Your take on this game?
Yeah, I think this is a game that'll be determined by the sort of intangibles, if you will, right? The schedule's kind of been a little off there with everything going on down there in Florida, and we saw a University of Cincinnati student spying on the Dolphins practice. So,
and Mike McDaniel putting extra players on the field in order to throw the tape off. Genius move.
Exactly. So if there's a little Spygate going on here, I think the Bengals definitely have the advantage, but it's a really close call. There's a part of me that wants to go with what I just consider, hey, at the end of the day, quarterback advantage goes to the Bengals, and that'll ultimately win out in the end. But I need to see their offensive line do something and really hold up, and I don't see it. So I'm going to say that if they don't have secret tapes of their practice there, that the Dolphins are actually going to come out on top by like field goal.
Yeah, because there's 9 seconds left, I'm going to go ahead and put the overtime ticker on. We're going to need at least another 30 to 45 seconds to discuss. Intangibles. So the Dolphins are coming off basically like a very hard-fought battle against a division rival where their defense was on the field. They had less than 20 minutes of possession. You know that defense is going to be tired. I think the Bengals will win this game. I think 3.5 is a bit rich. I am picking the Dolphins. You guys have seen my picks on Twitter. I release them every Thursday, and then we'll have our game pick show tomorrow. I'm picking the Dolphins to cover, but I don't think they'll walk away with the win. I think the Bengals will find a way to win by a field goal, but that means the Dolphins will still cover that spread. The big X factor is the Bengals' offensive line has been atrocious. They spent a lot of effort, time, and money to fix the offensive line in the offseason, and Joe Burrow has been running for his life. He was only sacked twice last week, but he was under constant pressure against the Jets. So this is a Dolphins team that just had Josh Allen under constant pressure, and if they can find a second wind after everything they laid out in the field on Sunday, I still think they're going to have pressure issues, which is why I don't think that the Bengals are going to be in a position to blow the Dolphins out. I think there's going to be plays for that defense to make. But that's really what I'm paying the closest attention to. Can that Bengals offensive line find a way to gel? Can they get the running game going? Joe Mixon, the running game, and there's no way to set up play action. It is one of the reasons a lot of these defenses are playing deep safeties against Cincinnati, keeping everything in front of them, not allowing the big play, which they thrived on last year with Jamar Chase. So yes, at the end of the day, I'm picking Cincinnati to win. I don't love it. I'm happy to be wrong, but I am picking my Dolphins to cover. Did you make a pick on the spread, or let's get that on the record?
I'm going to go Dolphins by a field goal. So
there we go.
I guess that's money line and giving some points, but I see what you're doing there. The emotional hedge, I like it.
I have to. I'm trying. I can't get too up on these Dolphins. They have looked amazing, better than I thought they could have looked. They're 3-0. Put them number 2 in the power rankings. Even if we lose, I'm really happy with the way the season has started.
And if I'm wrong, like I said, it's because the Bengals spied on them. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's an easy excuse to make. Mike McDaniel tried to throw him off, but they cheated. All right, that does it for our show. The game is starting in about 10 minutes or so. Ray, thank you so much for joining. Why don't you let everybody know one more time where they can follow you and All-22?
Absolutely. So you could find All-22 on all social platforms at All-22_PFF on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and then myself at All-22_Ray on those same platforms. And then if you want to check out the site, all-22.com.
Pro Football Demon, have to put this out there. Burrow will get pressured and Miami will take away his deep ball. That will be the difference. Pro Football Demon also picking Miami. Rich, I love you. Hope you're okay. I'm glad to hear that your power's back on. We'll get you back on as soon as you're ready. Shout out to everybody who showed concern for the Pro Football Demon. As you can see, he is good to go. That is it, guys. Enjoy the game tonight. Hopefully, we're talking about a Dolphins win tomorrow. We've got the preview for Week 4 and the game pick show tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for listening and watching. This has been 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football. We'll see you tomorrow. That's spicy. Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?
We'll say this. Gardner Minshew is the best backup in the NFL.
I love Gardner.